It's my pleasure now to ask the Hon Alan Cadman, a great friend and mentor of Steve's, and this is special for Steve to have Alan here to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Brian. Before we start, I think I want to recognise the real hero. Mum, come out here. Come on, come on. Ladies and gentlemen, this lady has had a childhood that is beyond our knowledge, and she and her husband should not have produced the family they produced. And it's just a wonderful story. Thank you so much. You're a marvellous woman.
Thank you.
And it's great learning about your life. And if you'd like to sort of go back there, I'll just tell you a little bit about this great family. Because my job is to encourage you to buy that book and actually read about all these wonderful anecdotes that you're hearing from family members. But the substance of the book is what called my attention. Everybody's got a story of some sort or other. Everybody's got something to tell. And when you write it down, as Steve has, it captures the attention of others. And I found myself time and again identifying with chapters, with sayings, and with little phrases that have been used. And I want to read some of them to you as we go through. Both Dad and Mum, Sid and June, experienced the war. It's something that none of us here really experienced, I don't think, in Britain, and on the receiving end of the uncertainty and the trauma of separated families, people dragged apart, children sent to the country, mums and dads not knowing whether they're going to see each other after work. All of those things impacted on June and Sid's mum and dad and on they themselves. And so the war stories that come from the book carry important principles to us today about the significance of families and support, mutual support of families. And that's why it's really significant that dear June is here, because she is part of the foundation of this story. We don't know what we sow. And it's very interesting that Sid, Steve's dad, was influenced by the sons of Sir William Alexander Smith, the founder of the Boys' Brigade. Now, he could have gone completely off the rails and just by chance made a friendship of these two older men who tutored him, who taught him, and set him in a direction that he may not have otherwise followed. And from Steve, first of all from Sid, or really from Sir William Alexander Smith, his two sons, and then to Sid, and then to Steve, and now to Rachel, we don't know the impact of what we say or do and what the follow-on over generations is going to be. And this is a wonderful example of how this flowed through from family to family. And I think that the strength of this story is really what Sid said he learned from these two brothers. If you don't like something, don't sit around moaning. Do something about it. And I think you can see that in Steve, and you can certainly see it in Rachel. And so there we have the inheritance of a man that founded a great movement of boys, not existent now, but look at what he said. The tenacity and willingness to admit mistakes or some wrongdoing to others, that's a characteristic of the family. It comes from Sid, comes from those boys. And just glimpses of what Sid was like. And it's a sad day that he's not here, but here's some of his sayings. Everything you do affects somebody else. If you don't like something, don't sit around moaning about it. Do something to change it. There is a price that someone paid who went before you, and you must be prepared to pay the price now for future generations. And so those are the wisdoms that Steve grew up with as a child. And in fact, on page 37, we've got a part of a poem about Sid. I want to just read a small verse of it. And this is what it's called, Per Adura ad Astra, through adversity to the stars, the motto of the Royal Air Force. Not the Royal Australian, the Royal Air Force. Now, this is what this verse said. You said, beware, cause what you do affects some other side. And sunshine, when the chips are down, defend your Queen and God. And so that's the principles of this story. And they're great. And I'm going to just do the first little bit because it build on and build on and build on. And you just need to grab some of this for yourself. And I was delighted to do so. At the age of 16, as we've heard, Steve shot off to Australia. He was going to start a new life. Big Brother movement. Much maligned in some quarters, as were the Dreadnought boys. Harold Rawson was a friend of mine. He was the Anglican minister out at St Matthew's Church, that great historic Greenway Church at Windsor. Rawson was a Dreadnought boy, and the courage and determination that Steve exhibits was reflected in Harold Rawson and his life. Out to Baldry, of all places, out in Parks. Steve thought he was going to a wonderful country residence called The Park. But actually he ended up beside the telescope. And he was excited about the telescope, but nobody else in the town was really worried. They thought it was a nuisance. And so Steve was out there at Baldry and doing the long and winding road, because he couldn't see the end of the road that he'd started on when he arrived, because the boss was pretty ordinary, the work was hard, it was long hours, but the lessons learned are evidence. Only 3.5 years of your life was spent there, Steve, and yet the impact of attitude to employees and relationships to other people, the understanding of small communities and how they ought to work together. So much of what you exhibit I can identify with as coming from that time. 6 months in the new job, and you accepted it. For the first 3 months, you saved your money to go back home to Britain. You'd had it. But after that, you got a horse of your own. You saved enough money because there was nowhere to go to buy a car. And here, you started in judging cattle. And this is a tankard that was given to the ASC Beef Cattle Junior Judging Competition, sponsored by Rural Bank of New South Wales, Western Group, 1971, first prize. And so, as secretary of the local Rural Youth Club, Steve really started to identify with that community. But then he started to say things about people around him, and the shearing shed is an interesting story in here. And by the way, ask Steve about his finger. Read the book and find out why his finger's a problem. They'll learn about you if they read about your finger. This is what he said to his boss. I get up at 4 a.m. and work till 7 when shearing starts. Then go through till 4 in the shearing shed. Then I do my other work. I'll be finished by 10, and then I'll press wool at weekends and between times. That was his days, 7 days a week out at Baldry. Not a very good introduction to Australia, and particularly he got abused and bullied for doing that. And he was referred to as that Tommy Blake. I don't know, he's saying the book Blake. I'm not sure Blake was the word used, but it may have been Tommy something or other started with B. They teased you about snakes, they did all sorts of things to you. And when you had had enough and you responded and put a shearer down the chute after his sheep, they accepted you because you'd responded. 3.5 years, long days. And then Mum and Dad and the family arrived. Came in by boat, and June spotted him on the wharf, said, "There's Stephen." Nobody agreed, but there she spotted her son from far away. And so the family were in Australia, because she'd always wanted to come to this country. But there was an extra element all the way through this book that just teases your attention. And what's behind this bloke? Why is this saying? What's happening here? And then you realise that from a young boy he said, tell me about God. And you'll find that in any special person, any person that is outstanding, there is an extra factor in their lives. It may be, as Steve, and something I share with him, a faith, but it may be a vision, it may be some sort of plan that they've got for their lives. There is always that extra element in a special person's life, and I encourage you to find that special purpose, and it makes a difference. Then we go on to the money business. We came to Sydney. Dr. Lazarus is here tonight. Wonderful man. The Garvin Institute, great things that Steve did when he moved to Sydney. The public benefits of Benbrow. And on page 252, here's the story about snakes. Lance would always tease me about snakes, as he had trouble with his hip. Getting through fences always presented him with a problem. I would often hold the strand wire apart to make it easier for him to get through, and he would then reciprocate. But sometimes as I was coming through, he'd yell, "Look out!" As I reeled backward, he'd laugh heartily. One day, I just happened to part the wires, and he's halfway through when I spotted a brown snake. I yelled, "Look out!" And of course, Lance ignored him. And almost was bitten by a snake. Finding my way. I formed the view that if you want to be a winner, then spend time with winners and be teachable. It may be cliched, but it's true. There is no gain without pain. It may be the pain of learning or of changing or admitting you were wrong. It is important to be prepared to accept gracefully and help others, offer and listen and consider another point of view. These people all spoke wisdom into my life, taught me, and they all believed in me, guided me and encouraged me. They helped me to heal. I found myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, I, like them, could be an eagle. And so, Steve, your book is just a great read. More than a conqueror. I think you're saying to all of us, that is the promise we can all have. We can all be more than conquerors. You have found a way to be a conqueror, and you have overcome. And this book that's going to be dedicated in an auction tonight, the very first one for sale, is going to an auction to assist one of your things. You've won so many Prime Ministerial awards. You've won 4 in a row, Employer of the Year. They told you not to come back. They gave you the big super one at the end of the time. They say, well, that's it for you because you've had so many successes as Employer of the Year. And it's great to see Arthur and the team, some of the team here tonight from Benbrow, because you've got a very special attitude about what a person can do. It's not what they can't do, it's what they can do that's important to you. And so Benbrow was the start of that. Employers making a difference, another huge achievement. The EPIRB results, and now exercise, enterprise, effort, encouragement, commitment, one after another. You're a superb individual, but if you want the secret, you're going to have to buy this book. I just want you to buy this book because it's worth it. Every word in there is worth reading. And when the auction comes up, I think that, Steve, if you'd like to come here, I just wanted to have you here, and perhaps Susie, Rachel and Mum. Mum, would you like to come over, please? Do, all of you. Would you just stand over here, please, and we'll come here. Steve, I want to congratulate you on this book, and I want to thank you for writing it, and I hereby launch it. It's launched, open for the public to read, and be delighted in doing so. Thank you.